just take a closer look at how religion works, to realize its goal has never been to free human beings, but to control them. Several thinkers understood this centuries ago, many of whom are now almost forgotten and rarely mentioned in schools. One of them was Paul-Henri Thiry de Holbach, who lived in the heart of the 18th century. He was one of the few who had the courage to say something that still today many consider unacceptable. God does not exist, and the very idea of God is nothing more than an invention created to keep people trapped in ignorance and fear. Paul-Henri Thiry de Holbach was born in 1723 in Edesheim, Germany, but spent nearly his entire life in France, where he became a citizen and a key figure of the Parisian Enlightenment. Philosopher, radical thinker, salon host, patron, and translator, he was one of the sharpest and most explosive minds of his time. He came from a wealthy family, but it was thanks to an inheritance from his uncle, Franz Adam de Holbach, that he was able to live free of financial worries. From that moment on, he also took the noble title of Baron, which is why he became known as Baron de Holbach, a name that stayed with him for the rest of his life. He studied at the University of Leiden in the Netherlands, where he focused on law and natural sciences, especially chemistry, physics, and modern philosophy. In his famous Parisian salon, located on Rue Royale, one of the city's most elegant historical streets, he hosted for over 30 years some of the most important thinkers of his era, including Diderot, Helvetius, Hume, D'Alembert, and Rousseau. Holbach played a key role in the creation of the Encyclopédie, but often stayed in the background by choice, publishing many of his works under pseudonyms to avoid censorship and religious persecution. He wrote over 50 books and essays. His main works include The System of Nature, a manifesto of materialism and modern atheism; Common Sense, a direct and clear attack on religion and its psychological and social mechanisms; Christianity Unveiled, a critique of Christianity as a system of domination and deception; and also Social System, Natural Politics, Universal Morality, and Ethocracy, in which he developed his political and moral ideas with a secular and utilitarian approach. He passed away quietly in 1789 in Paris, the same year as the French Revolution, at the age of 66, due to pneumonia. Religion had taught people to submit to a higher authority, one that can't be seen, touched, understood, or known, yet one that demands to be obeyed and worshipped. Everyone knows this pattern. It's been this way for centuries. But anyone who dares to question it is still labeled dangerous, heretical, subversive. De Holbach had the courage to face this system and say what no one else dared to. Religion was never created to seek the truth. It was created to keep people under control, to stop them from thinking for themselves, to convince them that pain must be accepted, that suffering is necessary, that poverty is just a test to earn a reward in the afterlife. But does the afterlife even exist? No one knows, and that's the only certainty. Faith doesn't change the laws of nature. The body is not the enemy of the soul, especially because, as the philosopher argued, the soul simply doesn't exist. According to him, there is nothing inside the human being that isn't matter. No separate spirit, no immaterial essence, no eternal self. Everything that exists can be touched, measured, explained. And if it can't, then it's not real. It's made up. His goal wasn't to deny God, but to understand why people keep believing. And de Holbach put it very clearly: people believe because they are afraid. Afraid of death, of pain, of living a life without real meaning. Religion offers an easy answer. Everything has a reason. God has a plan. Pain is useful. Heaven is real. But that's not an explanation. It's a fairy tale. told to those who've stopped believing in themselves. In the name of God, wars have been fought, dogmas imposed, entire peoples destroyed. But Holbach didn't stop at historical critique. He went straight to the core of the issue. Religion is harmful because it teaches people to outsource their lives. It teaches them not to think, not to choose, not to take responsibility. If something goes wrong, it's God's will. If everything goes well, it's a miracle. Either way, it's never the individual's doing. Religion, built this way, makes human beings act like children. For him, the only way to truly break free is to stop believing, not just in God, but in the whole system that keeps the idea of religion alive. It's time to let go of ancient man's dogmas. Enough with absolute truths and authorities demanding blind obedience. What we need is a philosophy of freedom, a secular morality built on reason, experience, and mutual respect. His words were clear and direct. In some of his writings, he claimed the Bible was a useless text full of errors, that the Christian God invented by man was a capricious and cruel tyrant who thrived on blood and submission, and that religions created a caste of men, priests, who produce nothing, live off others, and hand out words dressed up as empty promises. According to Holbach, miracles were invented only to hide the lack of evidence. There's not a single part of religion that can't be better explained without invoking a God. And yet, precisely because it can't be proven, God becomes untouchable. Anyone who questions him is accused of blasphemy, of being a danger. But as Holbach said, the real blasphemy is teaching a child that their body is dirty, that their mind is weak, and that only through denial and suffering can they be worthy of salvation. That's the poison passed down for centuries under the name of faith, and still accepted today without question. But look closely. The more religious someone is, the more they risk being morally corrupted, not because religion corrupts, but because it always offers an escape route, forgiveness, absolution, the chance to mess up endlessly as long as you apologize to an invisible authority. Forgiveness becomes currency, a form of blackmail. Holbach understood it clearly. Nothing is more common than religious tyrants, and nothing more rare than atheists in power. Because atheism doesn't offer rewards. It doesn't threaten punishment. An honest atheist does good because it's the right thing to do, not out of fear of hell or hope for paradise. The atheist is a free human being who cannot be manipulated. In one of his most radical passages, he wrote that a true rebirth of humanity would only be possible once the remains of religion were completely removed. When the decaying limbs of the divine feast, as he called them, are no longer scattered everywhere. A brutal phrase, but one that perfectly captures what religion continues to do to people's minds, a rotting illusion. The entire religious structure is a dead body, artificially preserved, like a decomposing relic that no one dares to bury. And what keeps it alive is not truth, but fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of being alone. It's fear that forces people to kneel, fear that turns myths into dogmas, fear that silences reason. That's why, he said, no system is more dangerous than religion when it comes to destroying inner freedom. Because it doesn't just impose rules, it imposes thoughts, emotions, desires. It tells people what they should feel, want, be, and anything outside those limits is called sin. There's nothing alive in what's believed out of habit, accepted out of fear, or respected only because it threatens punishment. Holbach didn't sugarcoat it. Religions were born in ignorance, grew in terror, and survive in the mental laziness of those who've given up thinking. In his view, humanity never needed God. It needed someone to obey. That's why the clergy built their authority on superstition, darkness, and guilt. Not to help people, not to guide them, but to keep them quiet and obedient in their place. Religion, wrote de Holbach, is the science of imposture, the art of ruling over weak minds with nonsense words. And then he went even further. Faith is the refuge of those who don't want to know, who fear knowing, who simply don't know. Faith, in this view, is no longer a search for meaning. It's a surrender of meaning, a form of self-erasure. And when people try to break free from it, to look at it from the outside, what they see is this: an empty structure held together only by centuries of fear, blood, and silence. To de Holbach, religion is the subtlest poison ever invented. It doesn't kill the body, it kills the mind. It doesn't destroy life, it destroys consciousness. And as long as this poison keeps flowing, passed down as faith, humanity will never be truly free. That's why he spoke of rotting illusions, because once reason kicks in, once the eyes open, faith starts to rot. But instead of letting it go, many perfume it, decorate it, turn it into a sacred object, and worship it anyway. So what's the alternative? For de Holbach, the answer is simple: live for what truly exists, for real pleasure, for freedom, for justice. True goodness is born only when we stop obeying rules imposed from above and start building an ethics grounded in mutual respect, in shared and individual happiness, in personal responsibility. Religion teaches us to look toward God. De Holbach tells us to look at reality. Because this is where life happens. This is where love happens. This is where pain happens. And only here in the real world can something actually change.